Welcome everyone, Dr. Thor here. Get ready for Gnosis. Well, I want to talk about stupid extraterrestrials and Billy Meier. This is a case that has been going on for 40, 50 years now. Billy Meier, I believe, is in his 86, his middle to late 80s. He's been around for years, so is his organization, and he has many followers. He's had lots of supporters. He's had lots of critics, etc. And it's always very difficult to judge these cases because of the so many different realities of it. Now, many people have investigated him that are relatively trustworthy, if there is such a thing. So, they have their own personal egos to deal with. They want the publicity. I know the alien contact dude. I'm special. I'm writing books. I'm making money. I'm getting out there. There are lots of problems with this. Now, there's some great interviews with the Bill Jenkins, the radio guy, who started the first program ever dealing with kind of X-File type things. It certainly wasn't the follow-up done by a very uncredible person out there. So he was the first one to do it. He did it for years. I believe that Bill Jenkins was about as credible as you can get, but he also tended to be delusional. People don't want to take the middle ground. Also, if you contact somebody and you want them on your radio show and you give them a hard time, well, they're not going to go on there again, and your ratings are going to go down. There are problems when you are not fully independent. And secondly, if you haven't really reached the state of gnosis. Bill Jenkins had all sorts of different belief systems that I don't agree with, but he was a good man, tried to do the right thing to a degree, but he was under harassments, and ultimately he left nothing. Not even his shows, to any great extent, are out there. I don't know, it's 20, 30 shows. He probably did many more than that, and that's all that's out there. So he didn't own the shows, but you think that in his later age, he would have made sure that that legacy was left. So there's a lot of problems with people, and he's a guy who had power and money and knew everybody. It's not like the average person or just an individual like myself with very limited resources. So the whole idea is these people don't, and they know all the big shots. But, certainly if anybody has credibility, it's him to whatever degree you want to give that. 70%, 80%, I don't know. Certainly not people like Art Bell, who was nothing more than an entertainment person who really had no credibility whatsoever and manipulated things like the Levitron. Oh, it's a levitation device. No, Art, it's a magnets. 2 magnets. So these are the kind of things he did to whore himself and put on a lot of sensational people that were just complete idiots, like Ed Dames. The world's coming to an end. The Martians are coming. Every time. It's pretty sad that this guy was a military officer. But I guess it really sums up the military, who basically hasn't won a war ever. So it really fits. So the whole idea is these kind of guys, and made a fortune, Ed Dames, teaching his remote viewing, which probably couldn't do worth a damn. So it's the same old story here of credibility and what these people are. But does that make everything they do bad? Does he have a terrible course on remote viewing? Well, I'm sure you're getting the good basics there. He's a guy who lives on Maui in a big giant mansion, and not to mention living on Double Dipper that gets a huge governmental pension on top of the millions he claims to have made. But yet again, there doesn't seem to be any direct in-your-face results from these people. But again, there's the catch-22. Do you really want to prove that you can win the lotto, know all the information? Well, he was running a company doing that. But he also makes a lot of money with seminars and training, like so many people in the world. Most of these internet gurus are making money off of selling you courses. They really haven't done much of anything. So this is all important for us to know. Who are these people? And we do the same thing with Billy Meier. And who are these people that they meet? And I'm not going to go into all the little details. Let's just cover this out. I've read a lot of his stuff recently. Oh, God. It's like sticking a knife in your eye. So who is Billy Meier and everything else? He's got his little following. He's got some Jamocha that does everything. And I recently watched their most latest film put out by his organization and the guys out there pushing him. And they showed a whole kind of story of Billy Meier, his life, what he did, etc. And, the problem is that can we judge people and what they tell you by whom they are in their life and in general? Well, it's difficult. It doesn't mean because they're kind of bad, corrupt people that they didn't necessarily have some sort of interesting experience. But it does tell us they have interpretation problems. I've talked about this many, many times. People write books and then they have this huge bibliography in the back. Now, bibliography, I stole my information from here. That's what a bibliography is for. I will never put a bibliography in any of my books because that's a stooge thing. I don't really care where someone gets their information from. Does that prove anything to me? I read 50 books on it. Well, I guess that helps, but did you understand any of it? Probably not. And how did you interpret it? Well, I read all these books on UFOs and Jesus told me. Here we go again. It's in the Bible. It's in the Torah. It's in the Quran. Oh, good God. So, they always have to bring out the toilet paper to justify that they know how to clean themselves. Well, it doesn't do anything. So, what are they judging things by? So, the point that someone's written a book and you've read it, yeah, he said it's right. What do you mean he said it's right? Maybe he was wrong. The problem is most people that write books and get them published and now go into libraries are all the books supported by the institutions. I wonder where all the books that are being published now in the last 10 years by Amazon, Lulu, and all the other companies out there, are those in libraries? Well, 30 years ago I tried to get my books in libraries, I even had an author that said, well, you name it educational and the libraries will buy it. Well, the only library that bought that was on the planet Zarg. And yes, we like your paper. It tastes good. So the whole idea is that none of them bought it. People don't buy it. They don't put it in institutions because you're just an independent publisher. You're not the brainwashed books out there. So the whole idea is all the good information out there, and you rarely see any individually private published books listed in any bibliography because of the fact the authors are too cheap to go out and buy books. So they go to libraries, which I am totally against. People shouldn't be able to get free books. As far as I'm concerned, that's stealing. But that's another reality. So it proves nothing. What I want to know is what your conclusions are after your research. And I don't care who you researched before. I don't care if you've read only one book and you looked at it and say, well, I figured it out. I come to the right conclusion. That's right. That's right. That's all you need. You don't need 50 books with 50 different opinions from these Goomba idiots that have no idea what they're talking about. Oh, it's a published book. It's good. It was in the New York Times, doctor. Don't you get it? Yeah, I get it. It's the trash the public believes in. And these pseudo-intellectual dummies that graduate schools say, well, we have to look at the big publishers. They have editors, and these people know what they do know what they're talking about? With what? Does an editor in a big publication know what a good novel is? Well, I mean, there are technicalities. Did the person tell the same story throughout it, or do they jump around and tell 4 stories that nobody understands? That's different. Is a story good? What does the editor know about that? So you either like it or you're not. So the whole idea is that there's a cohesiveness to it. And so I don't like it. It doesn't talk about things I like. It's not that clear. The same things happen with a lot of movies. And of course, then people want to judge that. So an editor who's doing cookbooks, can they do a novel? And secondly, if this is a book, a nonfiction book, how do you in any way judge it? Oh, it's outrageous. This sounds nonsense here. How could this be true? Well, the point is, that's your personal judgment. How do you don't know the subject matter? Have you studied it? No, I'm an editor. I live in New York City in a closet for $5,000 a month. I know. So the whole idea is that these are the type of things that you run into, so we have to be very careful here. So we just don't know, but you've got to look at people's lives and figure out who they are. Now, the entire case of Billy Meier stinks from beginning to end. There certainly are some very interesting things, and there may even be lots of witnesses in that particular area. Apparently has a lot of UFO sightings. We just don't know. Now, I can't believe anybody on anything. I don't believe people on cures. I don't believe them on their research. I don't believe them on anything. They all are living in a delusional reality of where they come from. They have an axe to grind, and they are brainwashed from one particular area. So you'll never find a stage magician who will come out and state that they believe in psychic power, because the industry will pounce on them and kill them. So they all play the same thing. And a person who's notorious for this is the unamazing Kreskin. Well, Kreskin, of course, was heavy into brain power and ESP. And, of course, because that was very popular in the late 60s and early 70s, and he made a fortune off of it, including making little trinkets that were charged to help psychic power. All the things that he would laugh at now because he's a theatrical magician. And, by the way, a big-time Christian. So the whole idea is that while it was okay when you could make lots of money off of it, now that it's out of favor by the bogus idiots like him that don't understand it, well, now they don't talk about that. But he was always attacking metaphysical and psychic people. He had a TV show out of Canada for 5 or 6 years, interviewing unusual people, and you can get some of these. You can buy some of these inexpensively on DVDs. And he said a lot of nasty things to people, but he had the people on that were popular in that time. So, and stated even back then in the 70s that he in no way wanted to support occultism, whatever that means, meaning metaphysical, witchcraft type things, that he was very much against that. He even stated that. So, but these are getting off the issue here. Now, the whole idea is, who is Billy Meier and who is this person? Well, he was a problem kid. He was in actually kind of juvenile prison. He was a troublemaker all the way around, even though they try and de-emphasize what he was such a bad guy. But he was physically being held by the authorities and was wanted for crimes, and then eventually turned himself in. And he has a very interesting background, and we have several different problems to kind of look at what is the mentality of this guy in terms of his background. Now, are there things happening there? I have no idea. People claim they've seen things. They've done all sorts of things. A lot of his pictures don't make any sense whatsoever. Other ones do. And the fact to say that, he didn't have Photoshop and couldn't stage things, well, this has nothing to do with it. This guy's a very cunning guy, and that's the one thing we can say about a cunning. He didn't survive as long as he did, doing the many tasks that he did do, and the way that jobs he had, including being in the claims, and I don't know how true any of it is. He claims to have been in the Foreign Legion. He ran there because the police were after him. So he went into the Foreign Legion, which again is a place where you go with guns and kill people at the whims of the French government. So what does all that mean? Well, it all means that it's a real problem of this guy's background in terms of where he's coming from. So he was basically a juvenile delinquent that committed crimes, that was under arrest and watched by the local police department in his area of Switzerland, which is a German area, and that's important to note. He's a Swiss-speaking, German-speaking Swiss person with a direct and complete and total ties to the Germans who have went in there and taken over his operation. It's interesting that most of his books, even 50 years afterwards, are not in English. Only a few books of his are in English. Almost all of his books are in German, the language that he writes. Now, we really and understands and speaks. Now, why is that? So after all these years, this couldn't be translated into a language that there is much more people on the planet that if you want to really be successful with products or books or movies or songs, Well, it's all in English because that's where the majority of the populations are, and particularly the populations that seem to have money. And this is the international language for everybody. Doctors, law, airplane pilots, ship captains. The international language is English. And this is important to understand. So none of his books are done. With all the money he has, all the supporters and everything else is there. So this little film about him I found very interesting. But he's also a guy that's very much of a violent, kick-ass type person. This isn't some sort of meditative guru type. This is a guy who murdered people. He killed people in the Foreign Legion. He's in this particular video on him made by his own people. He shows all the guns he owns and tells people how he'd use it because apparently he's been shot at or harassed, etc. But it always amazes me that everybody's such a bad shot. Professional murderers are after him. The CIA, the KGB. But they must be using those German guns that don't shoot straight because they never get these guys. So the whole idea, he also, one of his main professions, and we can't underestimate this, so the lore goes. I don't know if any of this is true or not. This is his story. What does it mean? We're just trying to form a background of this guy to find out, what is his mentality, what is his axis to grind, etc. And the bottom line is this guy worked in, different countries and other things, very typical of people that move around, even though I'm not sure how he was able to communicate going to some different countries. But the bottom line is that he used to hunt criminals and do kind of dog the bounty hunter. And used to carry a gun, and they called him the Phantom. Now, the Phantom may not mean much to you, especially if you're younger, because a lot of the Phantom stuff now is the Phantom of the Opera. But probably the biggest, most popular hero in comic books and other things was, quote, the Phantom. They made a few movies recently about him wearing this purple outfit. The Phantoms had books, thousands of comic books, and he's still very, very popular in places like India and, of all places, Australia, where he's still got a large following. And he was kind of a Batman-type character. He didn't really have super abilities. He wore a funny outfit and carried a gun, and there was some mysticism behind it. But he wasn't a superhero per se. He was more of a Batman character. But this was this was the big hero of that time. It wasn't Superman around the world, which is kind of comic. It was this kind of guy who was more like the average dude. So he was known to be this tough guy to go out and get criminals. And apparently, this is when he lost his arm when he was on some mission and a bus turned over. And apparently, his arm got messed up in the bus accident and had to be removed. It is claimed that they grabbed and helped him because he was identified as the, quote, Phantom, or Dog the Bounty Hunter, so they wanted to help him. So this is all very interesting that this is this guy's background. From there, of course, we must remember that he is a Swiss-German guy and has the mentality of that as well. There's a great racism. I believe he's very sympathetic to the Nazis, and for all we know, I guess he's too young for that. But the bottom line is that probably worked with them, or his family did. So he has very great Nazi leanings. He's very connected to, and the Germans have taken over his entire operation over there and are running him like a toy soldier. Also, he's stuck very much into his German culture. Not only that, he even talked to one of his stupid alien buddies, and they talked about who else? Adolf Hitler. So the whole idea, and the alien said, well, Adolf was a good guy and had a great mission, but he just kind of screwed up in the end. Kind of screwed up? So you can see how he's actually supporting Adolf Hitler, and the aliens wouldn't go into any great details. They talked about it for a while and said that, well, these things happen, but we can't talk about it anymore. You can't talk about something that happened 70 years ago that has no value whatsoever. And how does that? That's what con artists do that claim they're channeling. And then when they have to get into further details that kind of make sense, we can't talk about it. Well, I'm glad the aliens are so secretive. I'm glad the aliens give a shit about a fascist murdering scumbucket. Now, his aliens also claim to be historically coming from them. He considers they told him that they are basically from that area, that these are his relatives, we are your relatives, that they actually came from a different past when there were great societies, left the planet, and now are coming back. But they are genetically, racially, the same as him. Oh, how convenient. So we go back to the same old nonsense of this kind of stuff. And I guess that figures why they do nothing while they're inferior, stupid aliens, because they come from the stupidest place in the world, where the most corrupt, rotten people are. So the whole idea is that, does this add up? So again, it's kind of an egotistical, racist thing that these aliens would be so human-like. And it's amazing that everything that he babbles out, his diarrhea mouth, is nothing but garbage, new age stuff with nothing of value in it whatsoever. Apparently he's even having sex with these people because they couldn't wait to have sex with this little one-armed turd. So the whole idea is that all these things that go involved with this and the conversations, and of course they're beautiful women that he meets. I mean, all of this is really out of a comic book. And the problem with all of this and with these stupid aliens that seem to contact everybody who make these kind of claims, they did it with the PK Man as well. The PK Man who claimed to have this great power and could make it rain and do other things, which is not all that potentially difficult, as much as it may sound like that. Weather manipulation is, there are reams of information on that. So, of how people are able to do that, etc. So, it's not necessarily a great skill, but this guy was a drunken, obnoxious guy, the PK Man, and certainly nobody really liked him very much. And he was kind of a circus guy. Well, the problem is that you have to also balance everything. You're not going to get a person who works for the head of the studios, is a doctor or a lawyer generally, coming out and talking about all this stuff. You're not going to go out and put your entire life on the line. So you have to be kind of a goofy person. But with all the power the PK Man supposedly had, he could never meet his ends. He couldn't make any money except by the fact of blackmailing people, telling sports teams that he'll mess with you unless you give it. This is, criminal blackmail. Moving storms into cities and states, which in this day and age he would have been put in jail for terrorist crimes, and rightfully so, if he didn't get money for his operations. He couldn't go into Vegas, though, with his super abilities and his stupid extraterrestrial friends and hit a couple of slot machines, or they help him out with some cards. And, there's a lot of casinos all over the world, so he could have done this smart and gotten a lot of money that way. Or, as people I have known, psychics who were very wealthy from manipulating the stock market. No, PK Man couldn't do that. So, he claimed to heal people, but he didn't do a lot of that either. So all he did was a bunch of drunken stupidity and ultimately died young of liver disease that alcoholics get. Ah, what a story. So let's talk to Mickey Doe and Goofy. And of course, PK Man said that he talked with the extraterrestrials that look like insects, which doesn't make much sense. Now, I value, the genius of insects, praying mantis types in general, is really amazing. These are perfectly balanced insects. But notoriously, insects have tiny brains and don't function too well. So it's unlikely that there's any extraterrestrials coming here that aren't humanoid-like, bipedal, have hands and feet, because you need that to make things. Elephants and most all animals are much smarter than humans. I mean, they're genius in survival and everything else they do. Why have they not running the earth then? They ain't got no hands. You need hands to make stuff. An elephant can't drive a car, even if he knew how to. How do you grip the steering wheel? So the whole idea is you can't make things that way. So to think that there are insectoids, extraterrestrials, is not really something that I buy. So he, again, this is an old PK Man. The stories don't add up very well. So I'm not sure whom or what he met or whatever, if there really was anything. Certainly he was able to produce some phenomena. When things happen, there were UFOs sighted in the skies around there. We just don't know again. It's all very mysterious. And you have these very uncredible people. But as I said, you're not going to risk your entire career as a doctor, lawyer, and everything else, unless there's a lot of money in it for you. But you also have to have that temperament. Are you going to put up with the constant abuse you're going to get from the public everywhere you go? So the average person is not going to do that. So you're going to get people like PK Mann, that is a circus performer, and Billy Myers is just right up there with them. This guy is a nobody, has nothing. But we have to give Billy Meier some credit. He's very cunning. There's a bookstore in his town, and they went there and talked to the book owners, and Billy Meier reads a lot, and he reads all sorts of stuff, so he's very well informed. So he doesn't come off like a dumb little hillbilly. But we do have to understand, again, his cultural, contrived, criminal background of where he's situated with and who is running him. Very important to understand that. Billy Myers made ridiculous statements saying that German is the best language to explain anything in. Well, you got to be pretty stupid to say that. There's 3,000 words in German, French, Italian, etc. There are 1 million words in English to describe things. So it's just ridiculous. There's no better language for descriptions, translations, etc. Than English. It's just as simple as that because there's just so many words and so descriptive. So you don't have to put everything in a context to understand it. English is like Chinese. There's a character that means happy, just like the word happy means happy. So it's very specific there. Yet that's not the case in so many other languages, and you just have to understand languages to know this. So again, that's an idiot statement, but he makes nothing but idiot statements. Now, I have one of the books that reproduced most of his excellent photographs, and they were done at extremely high quality back in the, I don't know, it was the 80s or 90s, and I'm going to be showing that book, taking video of it here very soon, and we'll go through every page and you can look at it, and thanks to the great cameras that are produced right now, you'll be able to see it very clearly. But there are problems with his pictures, and they got worse and worse, and he has hundreds of pictures, thousands maybe, and supposedly people in that little cow pasture town that he comes from have seen things as well. We don't know. I would have to see it myself because I don't believe anybody, because I know that people are as dumb as a pile of poo. They have no conscience. They want to be in on it. Yeah, I saw him too. I'm special. Yeah, the aliens come here all the time. I'm a special one. So this is, of course, what people don't get. It has nothing to do with money, but it does have to do with ego. And even if it's not other people know that you have experiences, it's the fact that you're special because you have experiences. I hear this all the time from people who claim to talk to spirits, to gods. They communicate information. They're talking to the dimensional beings, all the things that they do constantly. And generally, as with Billy Meier, they bring back nothing. There's really nothing of value there. Now, while some of the pictures are pretty amazing, so it appears, and that's because Billy Meier studied this and how to do it. And you can do some amazing things with even a basic camera. And people, well, he's a one-armed guy. How could he do that? Ever heard of a tripod? Tripods aren't new, baby. Tripods started with the first cameras because the first cameras were huge, and you had to put them on a tripod. They were heavy. So he couldn't hold that camera, dance on it. Well, what kind of stupidity are you talking about? So not only is Billy Meier known for his violent path, for joining military organizations, owning lots of guns, this isn't a peace-loving prophet. This is a guy who is violent, cunning, and you don't survive in those areas, whether the military or a bounty hunter, unless you're smart. At least cunning. So the whole idea is that he could easily have taken these pictures. Now, one of my major problems with his pictures is that he's trying to show depth by having crafts that are virtually in trees or very close to them. Now, anybody that flies anything or even drives a car, what you don't want to do is be close to anything. So let's say you're driving a car, Doesn't matter if it's slow or fast. Let's go, you're going down a small street. Well, what do? You get very close to the wall on the sidewalk? Well, no, you drive in the center. So when you see spaceships and they're pressing up against trees, they're feet from trees, this doesn't make any sense at all. It's a dangerous way of operating a flying ship. You don't go close to stuff because that's going to get you messed up, cause you a crash, and kill you. And there's a lot of photographs like that. Now, there's lots of photographs that are not. That are out in the middle of the sky and everything else. And, of course, a lot of these things are kind of jokish. Some of the spaceships that he's shown have weird things on them. And people are taking this literally again. Well, there's a great question there. And if they have these round balls on there that obviously look like some sort of decorative trash can top or something stuck onto it, the fact is that what are those for? So we need to know that. So to buy into anything by what someone tells you and not knowing enough from them is a very fool's errand. Attacking somebody for no apparent reason just because you don't want to believe it or it bangs up against your belief systems is again stupid. So the whole idea is we just don't know. The bottom line is we don't have any good photographs of the beings that he's met. He refuses to give photographs because it's pretty hard to copy extraterrestrial beings. So he has taken some quasi pictures, which aren't very good, but you think there would be lots of these, and you wouldn't think the extraterrestrials have a problem with that. But there's nothing there as well. Very little of any of that. And some of this, again, like everything, can be discredited to a certain degree. He's got pictures of dinosaurs and other things that have been shown to be faked. They think the picture of one of the women that he claims that were the extraterrestrials was taken from a TV show. Well, he was good at all this, and those pictures are surprisingly bad, unlike the super clear pictures in the field. So the point is he studied photography, he studied how to do this, and he studied how to take these pictures. Now, in terms of all that, we just don't know. We don't know at all. A lot of the pictures are just garbage. Other ones are shockingly appear to be good, but we don't know what the techniques are. And there's lots of ways of doing techniques without the little Photoshop that everybody thinks are so great. Photoshop, which is relatively new in the world of software, is far from the only way to stage pictures. So there's ways to do it without all that stuff that works well. So the problem is there's always this very contradictory thing, which is what a cunning person would do. Will give people crap stuff that kind of tells you, give you a bad picture of an alien, then give you a good picture of a spaceship. Now the problem is the spaceships can be faked. The aliens can't be faked very easily. So it's interesting that that would be the unclear pictures. But there's all sorts of other holes in here that you can drive a truck through. So looking at the pictures is very interesting. I'm not sure what to make of them. Some are obviously just fake garbage. Other ones are just very, very interesting and certainly deserve more study. But the bottom line is this is something that's happening. There should be not only Swiss government there watching this 24 hours a day, and there should be cameras set up and everything else. Other things he hasn't done. He wants to make sure that there's intermittent stuff. Well, the point is he has lots of money. There ought to be cameras and videotapes being set up on his property running 24 hours a day. What's the problem? As I think they've done with Loch Ness. And, of course, they've never found the Loch Ness Monster, apparently. So the whole idea is that what does that mean with all this? So we get back into the sketchy thing. So he's very sketchy. Of course, it's hard to say with family and others. Most of his family doesn't support him. His ex-wife has said that he is a fraud. Well, I don't know if ex-wives are a good way to go with anything. So they have axes to grind. Apparently, she did little or nothing in the whole process except take the money in. This is a guy that don't in any way look at as being a simpleton because he's a little farmer. Yes, he has no official actual training in terms of college education, but that doesn't make anybody smart or stupid. He also is heavily involved in Christian philosophy and finding different books and other things. I mean, his stories get more and more outrageous, and what the problem is that he doesn't really produce anything of value. Now, in this interesting movie, which I've had trouble finding the link, hopefully I can find the link to this again and put it underneath this video, which again was made by his people. He actually shows what would be considered a laser gun. And everything it's amazing how everything fits into movie land understanding. They don't have special weapons. They have ray guns. The ships all look like saucers. It's all the same. It all fits into what we think. So these people come from thousands of years ahead, and they have 21st century technology, just like has been talked about in the Egyptian carvings and the ancient aliens. Why would there be carvings of helicopters, a 20th century tool, in an Egyptian temple? So the extraterrestrials came here by helicopter. Wow, that's an interesting thing to know. They flew planes, like we see from the ancient alien people. These look like planes. So they have regular lifting wings. I guess they use wings in space. Space doesn't have an atmosphere, people. So you only can fly a plane when you use a wing to get lift from it, because you have an atmosphere. But no, they flew these through space, kind of falling through space. So this doesn't make any sense whatsoever. So whatever craft you started in is the one you're going to have to end with. And I don't know why you'd possibly build another one. So these are the kind of silly things that you see, and nobody thinks about that. Why would an advanced society have primitive human technologies? Light bulbs. Yeah, light bulb. I'm sure Edison would like that. So, yes, I'm Thomas Edison, and extraterrestrials use light bulbs just like us. Buy my light bulbs. So this is the kind of nonsense we get into. Nobody's ever said that except myself. I mean, it doesn't make any sense. The fact that something kind of looks like a plane modeled after a bird makes a lot of sense. What doesn't make sense is that you would build a ship like that unless you're a stupid Earth being. Certainly, you're not going to fly that in the atmosphere. So we need to understand all of that reality that's out there. So these are the kind of things. So he actually shows him holding this huge handgun ray gun. And he's walking around with it and flipping it around. And it looks right out of a movie. It would be exactly what I would expect Billy Meier to make and contrive there would be a gun like this. Because it's oversized. It doesn't handle well. Certainly isn't even as Star Trek. I mean, Star Trek and their phasers were very practical. They were small, they were easy to handle. Some of them were just little boxes. Some had handles, some didn't. They also, etc. So, I mean, even those were more advanced than what these aliens had, But I guess the aliens are too busy being the Germans they are, drinking crap beer and eating sausage with hot dog, with ketchup on it, called currywurst. Ooh, greatest invention of all time. So the whole idea is that all those things that are out there that go with these things don't make any sense at all. And then the usual nonsense that happens, which is so typical of the disconnection with Billy Meier, is he shows what this ray gun could do. And this ray gun basically shot a hole through a tree. But you don't see the ray gun operating. What you see is the gun, the hole in that tree, which appears to be burned through. Again, are laser beam type weapons is what's going to be in the future? Well, that's pretty primitive. Now, lasers have been around for a long time now, and they now can be made very inexpensively and are very potent. But is that the best weapon? Is that what the future, or thousands of years from now, is really what people make? They don't have some other way to do it? And you know, it's fairly rare that any extraterrestrials have been stated of having particularly weapons. Now, it does happen occasionally, but most of it, they come in and disable you. You're a walking nightmare. Your entire nervous system, brain, and consciousness are completely open to anybody who has any kind of advanced telepathic. You just freeze you. They just go into your third eye and they make you into a statue. This has been verified time and time again. They don't need primitive little laser beam weapons, which quite frankly are primitive. After all, we have laser beam weapons. We have beam weapons right now, and we have them on military ships, which are basically laser beams that go and burn through things. This is not advanced technology. Lasers have been around for a long time, and now they are even better. So this isn't advanced technology. Well, this is nothing new, and this is the problem with all these contactees. They all seem to have Star Trek movie realities that they experience and talk about. And of course, I'm convinced, and some of the contact that I've had with extraterrestrials, they're dumb. And they don't really care about you. They're not anything. Just because someone has advanced technologies doesn't mean they are moralistic, caring, or in any way advanced in a thinking capacity. Yeah, they have some technology. And of course, humans have lots of very advanced technology as well, and they're rotten to the core. They're evil. They're corrupt. Do we think that extraterrestrials are any better? Well, I think it's a nonsense if you think that. Most likely, any very advanced society is going to be a very evil society and are not going to give a damn about particularly you Earth beings who really are the scum of the universe. Living on a paradise, one of the few paradises there are in this universe. I don't believe there's a lot of planets like this, period. There may be in the entire universe less than 100. So the whole idea is that all of this is something that we have to deal with. So the whole idea is everything fits into a science fiction understanding and it doesn't make sense. Now, how can you prove that you have great empowerment? So what he does is he showed this tree that looked like it was burned through, and it made a perfect hole there and everything else. All that I find questionable. And then they claim, without showing it, that the beam went through the tree and it was burned for about a half a mile away. Yet, don't demonstrate it. It's not demonstrated. You're showing the effects. This is the oldest thing in the book. You know, stage magicians do this all the time. They'll show you the result of something while they distract you. So the whole idea is that one of the tricks with spoon bending is that the magician has a bent spoon on them already. And they'll distract you, and then they'll show the spoon. All of a sudden, the spoon pops up, and you don't see him grabbing the spoon. And then he says, look at this. But the spoon was already bent. It was just hidden in their pocket or in their coat. So what they do is produce something out of it, but you don't see how it happens. You know, it's the oldest trick in the book, and he did this with his laser gun. Now, as he said, he's walking around with this laser gun, moving around like it's some sort of toy, which again I find kind of repulsive. Here you have this dangerous technology, and he's playing with it like he's in a movie script. Again, showing that it really isn't it, because you don't handle weapons like that. If you're a person who deals with weapons, you're always very careful of them because any weapon is dangerous, and you don't treat it like a toy. So the whole idea is that's what he was doing. And of course, they didn't show the gun being activated. They didn't see it doing its job. It's here's the gun. Oh, and here's what it did. 2 different shots. Now, I had somebody send me a thing claiming that they were knocking out streetlights. And they basically showed them parked under a streetlight. And then they showed the streetlight go out. Well, you're not seeing the car in the streetlight. How does that happen? What does that mean anyway? You have to have a correlation between two. So none of this really adds up to much of anything. So this just generates more and more questions. As I said, some of his craft, and so obviously faked that it isn't even funny. Other interesting, but I'm not a picture expert. They certainly look good, but I have problems when things are close to trees because that's how you mount stuff in trees. And you put things to hold up dummy crafts because they're attached to a tree. So that's always bad. But you got to remember there's a lot of these that aren't like that. But photography, and we've alwaed used the term used, oh, they use the trick photography. That's right. Photography is very tricky. It's hard to tell sizes. It's hard to tell movements. It's hard to tell a bunch of things from photographs. So how many other people have seen things, and he's got his little cabal of people, but there really isn't much there. You think there'd be a weekly Billy Meier's movie coming out, or at least a series showing that all of the things happening there, and there really isn't. And why isn't this? And why is this controlled and there's little or no media there, particularly with the fact that it's big now? People make a fortune from this, and I'm assuming he's been approached, but he doesn't in any way want to get involved with it. Why? Because the gig is up. They're going to find out you're fraud. That's the only reason you wouldn't do it, and they'll pay you a lot of money. And of course, he is 86 now. So the whole idea is that when is he going to do this? So there's a lot of questions here. He's a disreputable person. He's working with disreputable people. There's virtually nothing that he has that is proof of anything else. And, I don't really care if there are aliens. And I don't care if those pictures are real. What do they have to offer the people of this planet? And he has absolutely no practical information. He's written thousands and thousands of pages of New Age babble, and that's what it is. He talks about how the world is and and all the stuff he states are basically directly out of scientific texts. There's nothing new. There's no information. Of course, all the scientists, as we know, get everything right. So why would you possibly want to say something different? Well, the bottom line, all he does is quote regular science. There's nothing new. He even talks about the Big Bang. Now, the Big Bang and the term Big Bang was coined by a actual scientist who did it as a joke. He used a nasty term because it wasn't considered very serious. And we don't know if there was a Big Bang anyway. This is very speculative, but he jumps in there and talks about that. As he does with every other thing, there's no new shocking information. There's nothing new that doesn't basically fit into the common puzzle that we all know, because how do you verify things? Well, you say, well, you stated this, and oh yeah, the scientists agree with you. Aren't you smart? Aren't you right? Well, that shows that you're wrong. If the scientists, or if you're stating the same thing that the common ignorant scientists, which you all know get everything wrong, are stating, then what you're stating is wrong. So, it just goes on and on with this. So what has he produced? The bottom line is he produced any practical information. How to grow better. He's a farmer. Maybe he should grow a tomato the size of a basketball. No, none of that. How to make fields give greater yields. Help with the environment. Cleaning the soil. Is there any techniques of doing that? No. Any kind of practical information on free energy? No. Any practical information on healing? No. What he preaches is the same New Age crap that is on, the same repetitive nonsense that you get out of every little philosophical, religious type book. Take care of each other, be good, don't. It's the same stuff out there, and he's read hundreds of these books, so it's been documented. None of it has any kind of value whatsoever. None of the philosophical nonsense needs to be repeated by anybody. Everything philosophical, everything we need to know and how to treat each other and act has already been stated tens of thousands of times. I don't need this little twerp to tell me anything philosophical about anything. I'm certainly going to go to a better source than him, which is very easy to do. The other problem is that, as you said, there's absolutely nothing practical whatsoever. Well, what has he done practical? Well, he does one thing practical. He likes to make prophecies. Well, in the year this or that, this is going to happen. And he makes sure he does, like everybody that makes these kind of prophecies, he makes a lot of them that are very easy to make and very easy to actually talk about. Because they generally come true because that's the way the world is. Sylvia Brown, who a lot of people think is a horrible psychic, said there would be this COVID outbreak. But she ended it by saying it would disappear, just like Billy Meier does. There's always something there that's wrong. But he'll say from this year to that year. And I'll tell you right now that from this time that I'm talking right now to 6 months ahead, we're going to have rain. That's right. Well, if you're such a great prophet and these extraterrestrials, these stooges, these dumb bucket freaks, know anything, give me the exact day and time. I want to know when something's going to happen and what it is. And let's also use the terminology that is being used at that time. I don't want to hear an illness. I want to hear COVIDs. That's what everybody says. What's the matter? The extraterrestrials didn't see that anywhere? They just saw this breakout and they don't have any identification of it? No? Well, Billy, you screwed up again. And you do this consistently, and they like to claim that his prophecies are very accurate. Well, I don't think his prophecies are accurate, and I don't consider that a high level. There's a lot of psychics that are very accurate, much more than he is, that comes out with all these things. He is not psychically empowered. He can't do much of anything. He's a feeble, nasty, a violent person. And he has nothing to offer anybody. And he's hooked up with his Nazi Hitler worship and his whole group of people that are connected to that. Because that's what really he's all about. So we don't have any healings. We don't have any free energy. We don't even have a philosophical or meditative techniques beyond stuff that is taken from books that have been around for 1,000 years. His quaint little philosophy is boring. There's nothing new there. You can go on YouTube and his quotations. Love each other. Treat each other good. Oh, God, if I hear that one more time. Is that the wisdom that you have? No, that's the wisdom that he's doing stuff that is just garbage. There's nothing of value that he has ever produced in any value. And as I said, if you're going to give me prophecies, give me to the day. Give me exact information, not that something's going to come around then. And of course, when it doesn't come around them, you make another. Well, there's going to be another sickness in 2 years. Dun, dun, dun. And not quite 2 years. It could be 3 or 4. Well, these kind of nebulous statements, of course, always. And then, of course, what kind of illnesses? So there's flus every year. And from what I understand, the flu is worse now than it ever has been. So the whole idea is that all of the things that are going on out there, there's absolutely no credibility with him. He won't show you anything. What he does show you is bad. He won't take pictures. He talks about all. I mean, it just goes on and on with these idiot extraterrestrials, the stooges of the universe who support dumb farmers and support alcoholics, and they produce absolutely nothing. And they don't seem to be anyway empowered. Certainly, Billy Meier isn't doing anything to benefit mankind. He hasn't won any lotteries. He hasn't made money from his psychic powers. He hasn't helped people, healed people, figured anything, provide for the earth whatsoever. So what he has to offer is dung. If you're going to do something, well, it's about time we get into the reality of that. What works or not? Let's see working technology. Let's have some answers. Let's have some points in the right direction. Let's have some information we can't get. And none of these UFO contees have anything whatsoever. They never can produce anything. So ultimately, they're all coming. They're all going to be here. They're all going to invade. They're going to show themselves. I've heard this for 50 years. It never happens. Whatever they're connected with or everything else, this is not going to happen. And there's no reason why advanced civilizations should come to this particular planet and be known for it. Now, if they come here because their worlds have been destroyed and this is something that they can somehow survive on, even though they'd have to be oxygen breathers and they'd have to be able to tolerate the diseases and everything else here. But there is a lot of talk of that. There's talks of large groups of people coming here. But you wonder how they'd get away with that if they would be noticed. But there is a lot of talk of that. I don't know what to make of that either. It makes sense that certain groups would come in, but how would you do that? How do you get away with that? It's hard for hundreds or thousands of people to just show up somewhere. So it depends on what they're doing and how they're manipulating money and everything else. But none of Nothing has come out of Billy Meier's. You go to his website, he's offering absolutely nothing. He's got a few little trinkets that are kind of a joke. 98% of all of what he's written are all in German, which means very few people ever read them. And that's what's out there. So, and who is that serving? So no money is being put into getting the word out there because his books are worthless. There's nobody that's going to read his books and take them seriously except past his story. Well, I was a juvenile delinquent. I was the Phantom. People want to kill me. I seen these things. Once you get past that, the story is over. He has absolutely nothing to say but New Age cliché statements that are so boring, so low level, that only a turd would say that. How can you even say that with a straight face? So here we go again, and we have several people that are different. I can understand random contactees like the Betty Hill and her husband. This makes little, there they were on a road. This was a random contact. They really didn't have any conversation or anything else. They were abducted, etc. This makes a lot of sense. But people who are contactees with repetitive visits, like the PK man claims to have had, and they claim to have seen spaceships over his house before he died, they really helped him, didn't they? Did they give him hemlock to kill him? How come they couldn't cure his liver? Certainly that should be within the grasp of even mortals do that, but apparently he couldn't do that. And apparently he had great trouble surviving and making enough money. And of course, we just don't know, and we don't know much about PK Man's last days, what went on there. Apparently there is some records there, but a great parapsychologist ain't going to publish it. So the whole idea is that we just don't really know. We just don't know what's going on. He also had a family, etc., who apparently seemed to be silent about whatever activities were happening with the PK Man. Now, this isn't the case with Billy Meier. He has a lot of family, and all of them seem to be pretty negative about him, the way he acts. The publicity has been brought to them, and we can understand this to a certain view. And of course, most of his family, at least his ex-wives, have stated that he's a complete fraud. But of course, that's why they're ex-wives. But certainly he has nothing to show for it. And to run around with a cartoon-looking gun claiming that that's a big laser and not showing it in action, because you can have any type of thing and call it whatever you want, particularly since this looked like a sci-fi pistol, you can. It's actually, does it work? And let's see it in action. Now that's extremely difficult to fake. Now, it's easy to fake a gun. Well, it's a gun, and it does this, and then you show something over here of the effects of it, but you're not showing it in action. Now, both of those things can be staged easily. What you can't stage is both together. So here we go again with this, and the people that want to hold him up to something. Where's the beef? I had a couple of people contact me, and why don't you read his stuff? Well, I have read his stuff now. And I have his printed out books next to my toilet, and frankly, it doesn't even deserve that treatment. It's not good enough for poo. So the whole idea, there's nothing there. Nothing. And I've asked these people time and time again, you give me practical information. Where did he say anything of a practical nature? We should meditate. Don't shoot your neighbor in the head. But I got 50 guns. So the whole idea is that this is the kind of thing that goes on. And obviously the extraterrestrials aren't protecting him. He claims to be shot at, but, that makes him special. He's special because people want to kill him. People that are bad at it. So the whole idea is that all of these things that go on is something that we have to understand of what's going on. Where's the beef? There is no beef here. None whatsoever. There's nothing of value, no good information, no nothing. There's a bunch of basic pictures which are worthless, and I don't even care if they are real, as I've stated. Who cares if they're real? Who cares? Does anybody out there don't think that there are extraterrestrials coming here, no matter how rare they are or not? I mean, you have to be a bozo not to not understand that there must be. There's just so many reports of things, even if it's military based. There's so much of this happening that does anybody really? So that doesn't mean anything to me. Who are these extraterrestrials? What are the real informations we can come to? What's the universe really like? What are the stories, etc.? And you never get any of this. So there's no practical information whatever. They have nothing to pass on. And this goes from all these contactee books. And Billy Meier thinks that he's a genius. He thinks he's super intelligent. He's the smartest man on the planet. He's divinely connected. And he's going to make up a story well, I know that because the extraterrestrials tell me, not because he has no background. What is he going to say? He's not a priest. He's not anything else. What he's going to say, he's got nothing to say. There's no way to back up his ego of wanting to tell the world how everything's running. And the fact to talk about the same old nonsense, and there's a lot of insinuation on his part that he is a semi-god, a demigod, and that he's connected to this, and he's special, and he gets secret books he finds in a hole somewhere. All the type of things that he goes through, and they all say nothing, and they have no value whatsoever. It's all the same old story, and there's nothing of value there. And there never will be, as all this stuff doesn't work like that. We can't find any contactee who comes out with anything of value. Now, supposedly, there was a few contactees, and they were given a special salve to cure cancer. Apparently, these were contacts in Spain. Yet that stuff, again, has disappeared, which, of course, makes sense. But at least they produced something, and I believe this was proven to do that. So the whole idea is that, but he doesn't have any of this. He doesn't even have basic information. He doesn't have any different information. He doesn't know anything different about science, about physics, or anything else. He knows nothing. It's all the same old rap that apparently these very advanced extraterrestrials that come from hundreds and hundreds of light years away are basically involved in 20 and 21st century technologies and science. They don't have anything new to give Billy Boy. So none of this has come to fruition. So it's just a big, giant dry hole. I don't think Billy Meier's is certainly not a credible source on any way. He's been caught in numerous lies and fabrications. Is there something going on there? Well, there appears to be a lot of people that claim they see stuff in the sky there, that there's lots of activity. But I haven't found anybody credible that says that quite yet. So you'd have to go there, and you would have to spend a lot of time to see if you can get the same kind of contact that he did, or see things. Talking to people means nothing. Oh, well, this is a nice guy. He runs a farm. He's got nice kids. He drives a nice car. He loves his dog. So he says he sees extraterrestrials or UFOs, spaceships. Because a UFO is not a spaceship. It's a spaceship. UFO is unidentified flying. If it's a spaceship, you've identified. So the whole idea is that, does that mean anything? Yeah, but he's a nice guy. He loves his kids. So, what does that mean? It has no validity whatsoever. It means nothing. Because people are delusional, and they want to be special. They want to think something happens when they don't. This is a bad, bad problem we have. That's why you can trust nobody. And the problem is that since we have such a horribly corrupt government, we can't believe anything they tell us. But the problem is the government is better than the average person with their honesty. The average person lies all the time so he feels special and will fit into whatever the group around them tells them to do. So you can't believe it. The worst people you can possibly listen to is your neighbor, because he's a dummy and a liar. And every possible negative thing you can say about that, it's your neighbor. He doesn't have credibility. It's like when people vote in alternative politicians, the average guy, the actors. What are you talking about? These guys are worse than the professional politicians. So it doesn't better the populist candidate. What populist? What, Donald Trump is the average guy, a billionaire who grew up with a gold spoon in his mouth? Well, what are we talking about here? There are no average guys. These aren't people that did average stuff. And if they did start off that way, they're highly corrupt. But if you look at all the people in office, even if they're, quote, average. Well, they're not average. They go to top schools. Mommy and daddy are usual professionals. These are not the average Joes. And that's one of the problems we have out there. But the average Joe is just as corrupt as the non-average Joe. So Billy Meier has absolutely no credibility whatsoever. He has produced zero. Not a single one of his supporters come out and state anything other than, yeah, he predicted there'd be an earthquake in Japan in sometime in the next 5 years. And you know what? There was. This is the kind of nonsense you get from him. So these prophecies, these predictions are mediocre at best. And the fact that it kind of similar, doesn't. I want exact dates and times if you're getting this from some higher source. You won't get that. It's a fraud. He's come up with nothing practical whatsoever. So all that we can do is to judge people is what are they going to give us practically. And it adds up to nothing. Now, some people have claimed to be empowered, from Uri Geller to other people that have been zapped and then somehow seem to have psychic power. Well, that's very possible, because the most likely, if you've been zapped one way or another, you've distorted your physical brain capacities, and this has expanded certain areas like your pineal gland or your receptive energies in your actual physical brain that may trigger. We just don't know what causes these things. It would be nice to know. That may have this. People that bang their heads, have head injuries, claim that they have psychic powers now. So the whole idea, and some do. Other ones are just vegetables. So the whole idea is we have from what we can judge from this particular period of time, smart extraterrestrials stay far away from this planet. There's nothing here that they need unless they're coming here for some substance, whether that may be pure water or metals or other things, which, are rare in the universe. So why wouldn't you come here for that? They may pop in and take their stuff and leave. But other than that, smart extraterrestrials don't stay here. People are staying here in their underground bases doing what? I just don't quite understand. These people have families. They have realities that they come from. Why would they go from them? So this is why most extraterrestrials that visit here are robots. They are androids. Why would you leave everything to come here for what? You send a computer to do that. And you need computers will ultimately be androids, because that's the shape they have to be to do anything important other than processing information. If they're going to be physical and move around and interact, they have to be bipedal. So we have to understand all that that goes with it. So why would that be, and why would you possibly want to do it? I mean, what I hear from everybody cries, whether they're having problems or they're in the military, oh, I'm far from my family. That's right, I got to go to this school. Well, people do this all the time, and they leave their family for a few years to even on the same planet. But they don't spend their entire life, and if they had the capacity to go back and forth, why wouldn't they? So none of this makes any sense whatsoever. So he has absolutely nothing, yet they like to parade around these little things that prove absolutely nothing, showing a gun and showing the after results and not showing it in operation. These are flags that are so red they burn your eyes out. So we all have to look at that, and there's certainly, Billy Meier has no credibility whatsoever. His intellect is tiny. He's kind of an ignorant boob. He tries to come off sophisticated, and he tries to quote garbage New Age philosophies that he's read and religious crap, and he writes endless amounts of books because he's a big egotistical maniac that wants to get his opinion, as crappy as it is. He wants to write about that because he's on a soapbox, and it makes him special. After all, he ain't special. He's a nobody. He was a murderer. He was a bounty hunter. He's nothing. He was a juvenile delinquent. What are we talking about here? This guy is nothing. And if these are contactees, just like the PK man, you have to really wonder about the actual stupidity of the aliens to get hooked up with these kind of stooges and work with them at all. But maybe that's why they don't work with them. Maybe that's why they don't give them technologies. Maybe that's why they don't give them practical information, because they're stooges and they're dangerous, if that is true. But The whole idea is that the PK man, who was going to bring horrible tornadoes down on different states and everything else, was saying that his extraterrestrial buddies were helping him with that. So they thought this was a good way. It shows you how smart the extraterrestrials are, that we're going to threaten an entire state and they're going to give him money because the extraterrestrials couldn't dig up gold somewhere. They couldn't help him, as I said, with slot machines or gambling or the stock market. No, we're going to bring storms in. We are so intelligent, we'll destroy the entire earth and they'll have to pay us. Oh, there's a bank over here full of money. Forget that. We'll destroy the earth, blackmail them. This is what we do. We're the dumb aliens. We're retarded. We've hit our head in space. This guy's great. He's got good whiskey. We like him. So this is the kind of nonsense that we get out there, and we have to all be well aware of this kind of silly stupidity that keeps out there. And the Billy Meier case, I'm not sure we'll ever know. You have to go there, you have to spend your time and see what you experience to see if there really is. Now, is this a place that is a hot spot for UFOs? Well, apparently, in the bigger picture, this seems to be true. But, the only pictures people are really getting are from Billy Meier. Nobody else has pictures. People have experiences, but where are their pictures? I saw this. I did. Well, where's your picture? Billy has thousands. How come he's the only one that has thousands? So, and there's a lot of things that are just not. People are not meeting the extraterrestrials. They go there and they spend time with him. Oh, Billy doesn't introduce them. They're not talking to them. Well, why not? What's the problem there? So it just doesn't add up. Now, and the pictures don't add up ultimately. You don't drive down a street in even an automobile and hug the side of the wall so that you're very close to banging into the wall to either hit people or mess up your drive. You drive down the center. Why would you possibly be close to a tree or anything else? Don't make any sense. It's dangerous and stupid. So all of this just doesn't add up. And as I said, watch for my upcoming videos. I'm going to show you this entire book and every page of it, every photograph, so people will be able to see it. Because I want to get rid of this book anyway. But the whole idea is we're going to show that. This is the famous book that was put out there by the people that were on the Bill Jenkins show, who went over there and talked with him. But from what I understand, they didn't see nothing. They got no pictures. Nothing. So, all of this stuff doesn't add up. And there's been reporters from around the world, particularly when this was popular, including the Japanese and everybody else. But nothing has really come of it. We don't really have much of anything. And what we do have when it comes to things that are important is they're not demonstrated or the pictures are kind of bad. Well, where are the good pictures of the aliens? Where are they getting in and out of their crafts? Things that are very hard to stage are not available anywhere. And he was too stupid to do it? Well, if you're going to have pictures of a ship, what's the problem showing somebody walking out of it? What about showing these ships up close? What about showing insides of the ships as you have pictures of? No. They all look like Christmas decorations and trash can tops. All the things that people have stated of how he's made these things seem to add up that these are fake as well. But we should always investigate these things seriously, with people who are open-minded, who are seeking truth, not seeking to discredit someone, not seeking to fill a company line. If there is such a person beyond myself out there, to look at this and say, hey, is this real or not? And is it a question? Is it a negative or is it a positive? We need to seek truth in everything we do, because that's the only way we ever get anywhere in this life and only way we learn things. If you're going to take something for healing yourself that doesn't work and then you're going to tell yourself it does because of the advertising and the person selling it, you're not doing anybody any good. We need to find out what is the truth of it so we can use something or move on to something and find the truth that does benefit mankind, whether that's free energy, healing, growing, etc. Billy Meier has none of that. So regardless of contact or not, the end result, he's worthless. Don't waste your time with worthless babbling boobs. Move on and seek truth and seek answers. Until the next time.